Hi there, I'm Mark, and in this video we are going to have a look at the new responsive engine in Bubble. This is going to be the third and last video in a mini-series that I'm doing on this topic, where we are going to rebuild a professional looking and responsive website in Bubble. So if you haven't seen the other two videos, then now would be a great chance to go back and have a look at them in order to build the foundations, because we need them in order to continue today. Alright, so this is where we ended up the last time. We've implemented a, well, quite responsive and nice looking layout, right? And today we will continue rebuilding the original page. So we have covered the heading, we've covered the middle part with the perks, and now we are going to cover this section at the bottom, which I will call the call to action section. Here we got a headline, a smaller headline, and two buttons. So first we will start with a smaller headline. In order to do that, let's add some text element here. And we are going to give it the proper content. And again, as always, we are going to rename it. I'd like to do my prefix here and remove the fixed width setting, remove the minimum width, make the width fit to the content, and also remove the minimum height. So we get this nice text element over there, which we can now finally center right in the middle of the surrounding parent group. The parent group is GRP CTA, and this GRP CTA group is a column layout. So here we can determine the horizontal alignment at the text element itself. We couldn't do that in the parent group. Okay, so let's add another group. This is formatted now as a custom group. The custom group design, the custom group styling was defined in the first video. So if you haven't seen that one, you can go back and watch it now. And I will turn this group here into a flexbox container, removing the fixed width and setting a minimum width of 0 so that it shrinks when I resize the screen. This group that I've just added will contain the two buttons, and this group here will contain the button from the left hand side. Again, I will make this a row. And I actually won't use the button element to replicate these buttons because, well, this button element doesn't give me everything I need in order to replicate this layout. So I'm going to go for groups in order to build these buttons. And just as with pretty much every other group on that page, I'm going to make it a flexbox container. So here I'm selecting row. I'm giving it a minimum height of 50 pixels, right? This is so that I can make it look like a button. And then I'm just copying it. Okay, these are gonna be my two buttons. I could do column layout for this container here, but actually these buttons should be placed next to each other. So I'm going to go for a row layout here. All right, so just to get the text right, this is 32 pixels. You can see it here by hovering over it, and it's got this dark color over there. So the font weight is 500. This is all we need to know. So we're going to remove the default style. We're going to set Arial as a text, 500 as a font weight, and 32 pixels as the text size. Okay, so what else is there to do? So these buttons are centered in the middle of the parent group. So we can do that with the flexbox easily. Make them centered along the horizontal axis because, well, the container layout of the parent group is a row layout, and this means the main axis is the horizontal one. And in order to center these elements along the main axis, we can always select the group itself, the parent group itself, and click on centered here. If we wanted to center these elements along the cross axis, we would need to select the elements themselves and center them along the vertical axis. This is how it works in Bubble. So now let's apply some gap spacing here. 15 pixels looks about right. And let's examine these buttons on the original page. So there's this black background, but also we got this border radius of 28 pixels, and we are going to replicate this. So back to appearance, we're going to remove the styling, and we are going to apply roundness of 28 pixels. Same with the other button. 28 pixels it is. Okay. Let's add a little bit of spacing here at the bottom. About 35 pixels. And remove the minimum height of GRP buttons. So it collapses and basically has the same size as the largest element within, which is, well, the buttons. They have a height of 50 pixels each. All right. So now we can start filling and rebuilding these buttons. Right, so it's 20 pixels and the font weight is 500. So now we're going to add the text to the buttons and do the same thing as we always do. We're going to remove the fixed width. We're going to make it a minimum width of 0, minimum height of 0, and paste the proper text. 99.99 per year. So again, we're going to remove the style. We're going to set Arial as a font family and make the font size 20 pixels here. And give it the appropriate color. And well, we still need to make the width of the text element fit to the content. I forgot that before. Now that looks about right here. Okay, so I'm just gonna copy and paste this text to the other button. Gotta rename it first though. 99 per year. So copy and paste it. So for some reason I've added a group here. Of course, this is not what I want. I just want to copy and paste the text element. Here we go. And of course it should say something different. 9.99 per month. Okay. All right, so here you can see that the button, the per year button, but also the other one has a minimum height of 50 pixels. And I don't want to have this button to have a minimum height. I would like to determine the button's height with the text itself and the proper padding and margins. So here I'm gonna set a minimum height to 0, and this will resize the button to have the same height as the text. And then I can simply work with padding. So I'm gonna give this group a certain padding, 15 pixels on all sides. And here again, I have pretty much the same size, but not a fixed height, but with padding and text size. And also what I've just done is I have made the container alignment centered. So everything inside of that container, inside of that group, is centered now. And well, I need to do pretty much the same thing with the other button. So I'm going to select it, remove the height. Also, I need to rename it. And then select the group again and apply some padding here. Now it looks exactly the same. And again, container alignment centered. So let's have a look here. What else do we need? There's this 16% off thingy here. This is formatted a bit weirdly, so it has 12 pixels and this differently colored background. So we need to replicate that. And this would just be another text element actually. So we're gonna copy and paste the one we already have here. And of course, we are going to change the font size to 12 pixels like we've just seen. So yeah, we need to have some spacing between those text elements. We can do that by simply applying some gap spacing. Maybe column gap of 15 pixels. Again, that looks nice. And we need to align this text element, the smaller one, along the vertical axis inside of that button. We cannot do that with the button element selected, because in the button element we can only determine the alignment along the main axis, along the horizontal axis. So we need to select the text element and here align it vertically. All right, that looks good. So another check here. What else do we need to set? The background color is this hex value here. So let's copy and paste it. So we can add a background style to that text and make it this color that we've just copied. And of course, we need to change its value. So there's some spacing to the sides. We're going to add this spacing in the Layouts tab. Something like 10 pixels, maybe. And again, we now need to align this text element along the vertical axis, because by adding the padding to this text element here, this one got bigger, and so the other text element looks off. So here again, we need to set the vertical alignment. And again, we cannot do that by selecting the containing group. We need to select the text element itself. So we're gonna stretch the other group here and make the vertical alignment of the text element centered. And now we need to round the corners of the 16% off text. Something, well, maybe more like 28 pixels. Looks about right. Let's see how they've done it there. So this is a little bit flatter. Let's try it with 10 pixels for the buttons. And with, let's see, 5 pixels maybe for the 16% off. And we'll do the same for the other button, because this looks about right. All right, so now we can add the proper background color to these buttons and to some other text elements. So we'll make that all black and not transparent anymore. Same with the other button. And also with the headings that we've placed there. Make them black. And also on top here. We'll have black text. So let's see how this looks like in the preview section. When we shrink the viewport width, we have this responsiveness in the middle section. This is what we've implemented in the last video. But let's focus on what happens in the section below, and in order to do that, we'll do a little calculation in order to make things clearer. So both buttons are 400 pixels wide. This is a fixed width, so this means they need at least 800 pixels width in order to be placed next to each other. But again, there's this 15 pixels of column gap between those buttons. So we got 815 pixels of minimum width here, which means if we make the available width smaller than that, then there is the line break, right? So let's see if this is the truth. We can go smaller and smaller and smaller, and there it is. All right, so our calculation was correct. This was just to understand how these things work. So let's add some padding to the GRP CTA here, because we haven't done that yet. I'm gonna give it some top, bottom, left and right padding, similar to the other groups that I have on the page. And this looks pretty good already. Okay, but as I mentioned before, the width of these buttons is set to a fixed value of 400 pixels. And well, they could stretch a little actually. So we will remove that fixed value, just like that, and give it a minimum width here of 250 pixels and a max width of 400. So what that will do is that will give this button a maximum width, so it cannot grow beyond 400 pixels, but this button also has a minimum width, which means it cannot shrink below 250 pixels. And that's exactly what we are going to do with the other button, right? So now, right now, they are both 400 pixels in size. And as you remember, I couldn't go lower than 850 pixels before without this line break occurring. But in that case, now these buttons are able to shrink, so I can go below 850 pixels without a line break. You can see that here, right? I'm well below 815 pixels and I do not have a line break. I can go even smaller. And now I do have a line break, and as you can see here, there's a lot more space for these buttons, so they start growing until they reach 400 pixels and then they stop. Right, a row gap would look nice here. And let's check it out in the preview tab. Okay, so this is the page overall. Looks pretty good so far. Let's see how it behaves when I resize the browser window. The cards are getting squeezed together, they shrink until they can't shrink anymore. And now we got one card in each row. And the buttons are also doing nicely. Great, so let's get back to Bubble and fix the colors. So we have used this default style, the custom group, pretty much for every group so far. And instead of modifying each and every group and giving it a different background color, we will just modify the custom group itself. So here we can select it. You can see that we have this grayish color, and we will simply select none as a background. So it will look like that here. Okay, pretty close to the original already, and we can also remove the background for the page itself. Have a look at the preview, and voila! This is pretty much the page that we were trying to rebuild, right? Again, let's check the responsiveness, because I can't get enough of it. So if we go smaller, it squeezes the cards together until we cannot go any smaller. And also the buttons look great down there. And if we go wider, everything looks nicely and still tidy, because we have made the middle section have a maximum width of 1000 pixels, so it cannot grow beyond. So in order to double check, let's have a look at the original page here, check its responsiveness, and actually that looks like what we've built in Bubble, right? So of course, we ignored the section below, the footer of the page with the video. We just focus on the middle part, and this middle part looks exactly like what we've built in Bubble. So we have made this responsive, professional looking page in Bubble. And well, that's it for this video. We are done. So this was the third and last video in my mini-series about the new responsive engine. So we've gone from the very basics of Flexbox and the new responsive engine to building this advanced, professional-looking responsive website all in Bubble. So congratulations if you followed along. Thanks for sticking with me, and well, I will continue doing videos about Bubble and especially about responsive design in Bubble. So if you want to make sure not to miss any of those videos, please subscribe to my channel, give this video a like. It would mean the world to me. Thank you.